The RX 6600 is the rightful successor to the legendary GTX 1060 and RX 580. It has been forever since a GPU came out that offers exceptional 1080p gaming performance, runs efficiently, and costs less than $200. The Gigabyte Radeon RX 6600 Eagle has the 3X wind force cooler and a massive heatsink, which is almost twice as long as the PCB itself, with 3 fans and a single 8-pin connector. But thankfully, it is a true dual-slot card. With such a massive heatsink, even under the heaviest load, the GPU stays between 55 and 60 degrees Celsius, making it perhaps the coolest running GPU. If we take a look at the specs, the RX 6600 has an 8GB GDDR6 VRAM buffer that is connected to a 128-bit bus. While that may seem narrow, the larger 32MB L3 cache helps to achieve a 224GB per second bandwidth. In terms of performance, the RX 6600 can easily play any current generation game at 1080p ultra settings and produce about 55 to 60 frames per second on average. Even then, I recommend optimizing visual settings to balance maximizing performance and visual fidelity. Esports performance on this GPU is very strong. You can play any esport title, and even games like Counter-Strike 2, Fortnite, and Apex Legends run at 1080p and very high settings at 120 frames per second. You can even push the GPU to hit 165 or even 200 frames per second by lowering the settings. If we take a look at some other GPUs under $200, then the only competition to the RX 6600 is the Intel Arc A580. The Arc A580 is on paper slightly faster and has support for AV1 encoding for those seeking it. It can be faster in some games, but due to unoptimized drivers, it can fall behind as much as half the performance of the RX 6600 in some cases. I do hope one day Intel gives both Nvidia and AMD serious competition, but right now, the RX 6600 is a far more pleasant experience without any driver crashes or game optimization issues. Speaking of Nvidia, they no longer seem interested in making budget GPUs. The RTX 3050 sits alone as their only budget offering, but it is on average almost 20% slower while being 20% more expensive. Even though the Gigabyte Radeon RX 6600 Eagle is great for its money, it's certainly not perfect. It is severely overbuilt for what an RX 6600 needs. It could have simply been smaller with just 2 fans, and it would have still been an excellent card, since right now, it may be a challenge to fit in smaller cases. That being said, there are smaller models of the RX 6600, but those are much more expensive and start to creep into the RX 6650 XT's territory. ASRock and Power Cooler have RX 6600 models with 2 fans that are in the same price category, but the Gigabyte Eagle has a better build quality. The RX 6600 also has hardware-accelerated ray tracing, but it is simply not as good as Nvidia's implementation. The RX 6600's ray accelerators seem to be a waste, and any game becomes a slideshow with ray tracing on. In conclusion, if you want to get started with PC gaming on a tight budget, then the RX 6600 should fulfill all your needs. It barely consumes any power, runs cool, and can play almost anything at 1080p 60 frames per second with good visual fidelity. To summarize, what I like is the flawless 1080p performance, and it's extremely power efficient. On the downside, poor ray tracing performance, and it's large. Our rating for PCB design is 8.5 out of 10. Performance, 9 out of 10. Aesthetics and cooler design, 8 out of 10. Value for money, 9.5 out of 10, for an overall rating of 9 out of 10.